Here.
Sabatino.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Palumski.
Here.
York.
Here.
Toledo.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Onquist.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
14 present, 0 absent.
14 present, 0 absent. We are in session. We have a quorum. On to receipt of written communications from the public at this time. Is there anyone in the audience who has any written communications they wish to submit for council distribution? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on to public forum. Agenda item 4, public forum. This is an opportunity for anybody in council chambers to address the dais on any questions or concerns they may have. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes out of respect for other people that may want to speak, and respect for the job that we're trying to get done here this evening. When you're called, please approach this microphone over on the right here, and since we are recording, we ask that you state your name for the record. Address is optional. Clerk Spencer, at this time, is there anybody who has, if you go over your 3 minutes, I will give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap up your comments. Clerk Spencer, at this time, is there anybody who has signed up for public forum?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have 2 tonight, and I'll start with John Scudder, Elmhurst American Legion.
Good evening. My name is John Scudder, as I think most of you know, from the Elmhurst American Legion. And the reason I'm here tonight is to give you a rundown on what we're doing and what we hope to accomplish. And I'd also like to thank you for your service to the community. You're doing a great job as far as we are concerned. Your backing for the American Legion is beginning to show. We really appreciate it. First thing I'd like to say is that we've awarded 2 scholarships to students, one at York and one at Immaculate Conception. The young lady at Immaculate Conception has won our $5,000 scholarship. The young man from York has won our $3,000 scholarship. Usually, again, we usually try to give out 8 scholarships, but for various reasons this year we're down to 2. Boys State and Girls State, run by our auxiliary, are taking off, and this is where the young people, teenagers, usually juniors, seniors in high school, go down to Eastern Illinois University, and they put together starting a local government, a county, and then a state government. And it gets them into the area of this is how everything is supposed to work, and gets them involved in the civics. The other is, I'd like to report to you that with the VA, we help one of our veterans who's spending close to $1,500 a month in medicine for his rheumatoid arthritis. We have him down to a $7 copay, which comes out to $49 a month. This is quite a savings for him, and we also got him a choice card, which means that the VA can't handle him. He can go to any hospital in the state, and the VA will pick up the tab for him. So that's quite a benefit to this individual. Some of the things that we're going to be doing in the future, number 1 will be September 10th will be our military ball, which will be well attended. This is probably going to be probably a very big social event in Elmhurst. We have a Medal of Honor recipient, will be the guest of honor, and we have several other surprises for the individuals that will attend. This should be a very good fundraiser for us. And finally, it'll be our annual Thanksgiving Day for the recruits from Great Lakes Naval Training Center. We'll take them out of boot camp, for those of you who attended last year, and give them a full-blown turkey Thanksgiving dinner. Elmhurst Library is contributing the laptops again so they can email home, and members donate their phones to them so they can call home. I believe last year we did a real quick check. One called to Guam, there was a call to Nome, Alaska, and to Hawaii. So these kids got to call home for the first time because they're not allowed anything like that. Plus sweets, they got a lot of sweets that they can't usually have. What we're going to do this year, if there's any members of the council or city government that would like to ride on the buses that picks these young people up, all you have to do is let us know. It's a lot of fun. The best part is getting from North Chicago to Elmhurst in something like 25 to 30 minutes. It's really an amazing thing to see. So that's basically what we have going for us right now. The 2 big things really are the military ball and Thanksgiving for the Navy recruits. And again, a thank you for all your support that you've shown the American Legion.
Thank you, Commander.
The last person to sign in, Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine Street.
Hi, Kathleen Sullivan. I'm not sure you remember, but March 3rd, 2009 was the first time I spoke here on the topic of Pine Street flooding, and hopefully tonight the IGA will pass. There's been a lot that has gone on in the last 7 years, and I'm sure this is the best agreement that could be negotiated under the circumstances. There have been 11 public meetings for negotiations and many private ones as well. So thank you very much.
Okay, that's it for folks who had an opportunity to sign up. Is there anybody in the audience who did not have an opportunity to sign in on our sign-in sheet but still wishes to address council? If so, please raise your hand. I see one. Anyone else? Okay. Mr. Pragash, same guidelines apply. Please identify yourself when you get to the microphone.
Claude Pogich, 566 West Gladys. Interesting article in the front page. Council came up with over $1 million to pay off general obligation bonds. Unfortunately, it was a couple paragraphs short. That amount of money, did we retire any of the bonds, or was that just interest, or why didn't it include just the total amount of general obligation bonds the city has laid on our residents, like $60 million. It's a lot of money. So paying $1 million doesn't really have too much effect on it. On this meeting, we have a change order, ornamental iron. Why don't you send this back to your project manager for that garage? He's the guy that talked you into going with a no-bid contract for a firm that was uninsured. Now we got a change order to pay for. Why? It was such a great contractor, why is there a change order? And we still don't have the architect paying for anything. Interesting, isn't it? Then on this thing here, I want to give away some shotguns. I think it's a dumb move, unless you can prove that those guns were well maintained, and I don't mean wiping them with gun oil. If they should jam, misfire, who's liable? The fine citizens of Elmhurst or the people that take them? And if they're in such good shape, why do we want to give them away? I've known people that have had shotguns since they were kids. Still have them. But they maintain them. Yeah, here we go again. Another no-bid contract. Your people can't be serious. You mean to tell me there is nobody else in the Chicagoland area that owns a trolley? Just one outfit, the only trolley owners in the entire state of Illinois. No bids were for something special. What is special about a trolley?
Mr. Pragash,
There's
I'd ask you to
nothing
wrap up
special
your
about
comments.
But here we go again. A no bid, probably he's uninsured, and we're picking up the insurance. And I know shotguns. I wouldn't take one of them shotguns if they promised me the thing would work forever.
Okay, anyone else who did not have an opportunity to speak? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on. Announcements. Any announcements from the dais? Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. The Public Works and Buildings Committee will not meet on Monday, March 28th. we have at least 2 aldermen unable to attend that meeting, which means we don't have quorum. So again, no Public Works and Buildings Committee on Monday, March 28th.
Okay, any other announcements? Alderman Levin.
Well, if Public Works isn't meeting, then, zoning, the DPZ's not meeting either, so
Okay.
cancel that meeting.
Alderman Honquist?
Just to note that today is World Down Syndrome Day, which is different than Down Syndrome Week, which is in October. This is actually a global movement. Just wanted to make a note of it. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other announcements? Alderman Healy?
Public Affairs also will not be meeting on Monday.
Got it. On to consent agenda, agenda item 6. At this time, is there any item on the consent agenda any alderman wishes to have removed, to provide further comment, or vote no? Any items removed from consent agenda? Alderman Bram?
Yes, items 6.16 and 6.22.
6.16, and what was the other one, Alderman Bram?
6.22.
6.22. Okay. Any other items? Seeing none, I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 6.16 and 6.22. Motion to approve consent agenda. Motion by Alderman Mulliner, second by Alderman Honquist. Clerk Spencer.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Leader, excuse me, Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays. Motion is approved. Consent agenda minus items 6.16 and 6.22 is approved. On to agenda item 6.16. This is a report out of Public Affairs. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the recommendation.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Affairs and Safety Committee that the City Council authorize the city attorney to prepare the necessary documents for approval of the City of Elmhurst community grants. Signed by Chris Healy, Chairman, Danny Palumski, Vice Chairman, Norm Leader.
Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Healy, second by Alderman Palumski. Alderman Healy, this is your report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the last step of the community grant process whereby organizations from within the community apply for grants through the grant program. Those grants are vetted by a grant, community grant team. Their recommendations are sent to Finance. Finance reviews those from a dollar standpoint, makes adjustments as needed. The Finance Committee did that, and then it came to the Public Affairs, and we vetted the process. We looked at all of the applicants. We had some comments for what we'd like to see next year in terms of what we'd like to see reported back afterwards that staff will take into account for next year. And then ultimately, we all agreed with the recommendations, and what you have is what you have before you is the report then finalizing the community grants for this year.
Yeah. Okay. One minor correction to what Alderman Healy just said is that this was before Finance, but this was the year of transition for it to come from Finance to Public Affairs, and Alderman Gaston, maybe, you never know. Finance Director Gaston came to the Public Affairs and Safety Committee to do that transition with the numbers. So just a little clarification there. All right, any other comments or questions as it relates to this? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Alderman Healy, as well. I spoke with city staff earlier today, and this is a last-minute audible for me to pull it off the consent agenda, because after speaking with them, I wasn't going to do so. So I apologize for the last-minute audible. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things, and Alderman Healy pointed it out. I think it's important. I was going to do this under other business. Is that, yes, this is the first time coming to council, and I want to applaud the city staff, the city council, for having these come before the council and have these visible and have the opportunity to discuss who we are giving dollars to, via the community grant program. So this is the first time that occurred, and I want to applaud all involved for that. The other thing I wanted to highlight was American Legion spoke this evening. That was not a part of the community grant program, and to my understanding, as well as I just want to express this for the greater public, is that is a different line item in our budget, and it's outside of the community grant program, and therefore, my understanding will be discussed at a later time. So I wanted to highlight those two things. The last thing is, after speaking with staff, is there seems to have been some policy changes of the process on how we go about it. I don't know if it's necessary to document those policy changes or not, but I think that would be something that maybe the committee or city staff should consider in the future, of not doing what we've historically done and going through the finance committee, because I agree with staff as well as the committee that this is best fit for PA&S versus finance. In regards to some of the community grants, the policy that we have today for the program specifies it has to be a 501(c)(3), I get those mixed up. And I was kind of surprised after looking at some of these that all of these were. I wasn't aware that some of these were 501(c)(3). But one of the concerns that I do want to throw out there is that some of these seem to then give money to other charities. So in a sense, we're donating to a charity that's donating to other charities. So I want to make a recommendation of maybe that should be revisited per our policy and vet that if we should make any changes to the community grant policy that we have today. Other than that, I support everything going to all the current applicants, and it seems like we've got a greater demand since there were some that didn't meet the muster, but I'm happy to see the grants going to those that were selected.
Okay. Any additional comments? Alderman Healy.
Just one additional comment that is related, but not specific to the report, that there has been some conversation and some concern in the community that if you look back annually at what the city has given to these groups from a total dollar standpoint, that number's been reduced significantly from several years ago. Now, we did that because of budgetary reasons and when we were making hard decisions on revenue and whatnot several years ago, the community grant program was cut. The questions have been asked that maybe it's time to put some money back into that. So that's not a conversation for now. It's not a conversation for this year, at least not until later on in budget. But I think it probably makes sense that we take another look at maybe starting to increase the amount of community grant activity. Maybe not back to totally where we were previously, but certainly more than we are doing now, because clearly the need is there. Clearly these organizations are doing good things in the community, bringing outside people into Elmhurst, which is basically the what we want to do or try to achieve with the community grant program. So just planting a seed for later on that come 2017 budget time, we might want to look at increasing the budget of those of the community grant program.
Okay. Alderman Polomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to address the point raised by Alderman Bram. We did discuss that point that some of these organizations do end up holding events and then donate to other groups as their purpose for the event. What the grant does is it prioritizes events or activities that draw potential visitors to Elmhurst and demonstrate the report says collaboration and cooperation among Elmhurst organizations. And one of the concerns we had is the one that you mentioned, but as Alderman Healy mentioned, we're asking for additional documentation to be assured that our funds are going to promoting Elmhurst, promoting these activities and drawing people in, attracting people to these activities.
Okay. Any other comments? Alderman Bram.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I agree, Alderman Polomsky. I understand the intent. I guess what I would like as a recommendation for maybe future consideration is that if whatever, X organization can afford to give to other charities, but then they're coming to the city asking for dollars to hold the event, then it's kind of controversial in a sense that you have money for the event because you have money to give to other charities as well. So I think that just needs to be considered as part of the policy on when making decisions on, is that an appropriate dollar amount and is that an appropriate charity to give to in the future?
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to call a roll.
Healy.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mullenor.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Agenda item 6.16 is approved. On to agenda item 6.22. This is an ordinance. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the ordinance.
An ordinance waiving bid and accepting the proposal of Hudson Group LTD, doing business as the Trolley Car Company for trolley services within the city of Elmhurst, and authorizing the execution of a contract between Hudson Group LTD, doing business as the Trolley Car Company, and the city of Elmhurst.
Okay, to put this ordinance before council, I will ask for a motion to approve the ordinance as read. Motion by Alderman Palumski, second by Alderman Healy. Alderman Palumski.
I would defer to Alderman Bram, who pulled this.
Okay. Alderman Bram?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess there's no surprise that I pulled this since I voted against it 2 weeks ago. I won't go through all the reasons that I presented 2 weeks ago when the report was on the docket, but I will say that doubling the cost to extend operations for an additional week or two and not to extend the route to benefit more of the city of Elmhurst as a whole, compared to what is being benefited today's route, especially when there's many mentions in the presentations, et cetera, that we can't extend the route because of the doubling of the cost. The other two things I want to mention is one of the residents tonight brought up no bid. That's definitely a concern which I didn't bring up before, on why we didn't pursue additional bids. I would find this hard to believe that this is considered a professional service. So that's a great consideration on why we're not going out to bid. And then lastly, I think what is proposed, and if it passes tonight, we will be spending above what we budgeted for the 2016 year.
Okay. Alderman Palumski.
I want to speak to the point about the no bid. When I first asked about the trolley during the last discussion, this was the only company that provided an ADA compliant vehicle.
Okay. Any other comments? Clerk Spencer.
Palumski.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Thank you. Honquist.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mullenor.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
No.
13 ayes, 1 nays.
13 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Ordinance, agenda item 6.22,
Oh, did I forgot.
what?
to-
We did
I didn't.
All right,
I'm
sorry.
sorry. I don't,
I jumped. All right, so how many people are we missing?
I think the fourth ward isn't.
what? 13 ayes, 1 nay, correct? No?
I did not give a vote.
Yeah, we
I
did.
didn't, I
Oh.
wasn't called upon.
Oh, here we go again. All
Let's go
right.
back, Clerk Spencer. Let's start from the top. Who was our motion from it? We had Alderman Palumski was the main motion, and Alderman Healy was the second.
That's
So
correct.
let's start over
Right,
with
all right.
Alderman Palumski.
Okay. Palumski.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
No.
Okay. York.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
All right, 13 ayes, 1 nays.
13 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Agenda item 6.22 is approved. On to committee reports. Agenda item 7.1 is a report out of Public Works. I would ask Clerk Spencer to read the recommendation.
Based on the recommendations of the Burke Report and the desire to provide stormwater relief to this area of the city, it is therefore the recommendation of the Public Works and Buildings Committee that the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Elmhurst and the Elmhurst Park District for the construction, operation, and maintenance of stormwater and other improvements at Golden Meadows Park be sent to the Elmhurst Park District for their review and approval. Once the Park District approves the agreement, it will be brought to the City Council for ratification. Signed by Jim Kennedy, Chairman, Marty Deuter, Vice Chairman, Michael J. Bram, and Patrick Wagner.
Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Deuter, second by Alderman Wagner. Alderman Deuter, your report.
Thank you very much, Mayor. As we all know, the Golden Meadows project has been an agenda item for the past 2 years at the Stormwater Communications Committee meetings. During those meetings, the framework for an IGA between the city and the Park District was established. Based on the framework, the city's attorneys created a draft IGA that was reviewed at 2 separate Public Works and Buildings Committee meetings. Tonight's report recommends sending the IGA to the Park District for their review and approval. Following the Park District approval, the IGA would come back to the City Council for final ratification. Some background on the project. It was included in the original Burke report. This project will provide approximately 14 acre-feet of stormwater storage, which will provide relief to the 20 homes in the Pine Avon area that experience overland flooding in a 100-year design storm. As originally suggested by Burke, the detention area would have been constructed on the east lobe of the park. However, the Park District was willing to consider use of the west lobe rather than the east lobe. So what we're talking about is a detention area that would be on the west lobe of Golden Meadows Park. As far as the ownership of the land, because the funds used by the Park District to acquire the land, or because of those funds, the Golden Meadows Park is subject to IDNR, or Illinois Department of Natural Resources restrictions. The city originally proposed a dual use for the site, which would have required IDNR approval for the use of the park as needed for stormwater detention. However, the Park District's preference is to sell the west lobe of the park to the city. Because of the IDNR restrictions, the sale of the parcel requires the Park District to purchase replacement land, and the whole transaction will also require IDNR approval. Ultimately, as reflected in the IGA, the city would own the west lobe and have an easement on the east lobe for a stormwater pipe. The city would be fully responsible for the construction, maintenance, and repairs of the project. So because the city will be purchasing the west lobe of the park, one of the issues discussed in the IGA is how the value of the land will be determined. And the value of the land will be determined by averaging 3 appraisals from 3 separate appraisers, one picked by the city, one picked by the Park District, and the third picked by the first 2 appraisers. In order to get IDNR approval and access to the parcel as quickly as possible, assuming the city accepts the appraised value, the city will deposit 100% of the land value into an escrow account, and those dollars will be used by the Park District to acquire their replacement property. If the cost of the replacement parcel that the Park District identifies and enters into contract to purchase is greater than the value of the parcel in Golden Meadows, the city will pay the difference, up to 150% of the appraised value of the Golden Meadows parcel. One last issue that's in the IGA that I want to touch on is environmental contamination, which we hope is not on the site, but we addressed it. It is addressed in the IGA. As soon as the IGA is signed and permission to access the site is granted to the city by the Park District, the city will conduct environmental testing. If that testing indicates contamination, the city will re-engage the same 3 appraisers used originally to conduct new appraisals to determine the effect of the contamination on the parcel's value. If the contamination changes the appraised value, the revised appraised value will be the amount deposited in escrow, and the total cost to the city will not exceed 150% of the revised value. So that's the overview of what's in the IGA. There are 2 changes that need to be made, one to the agreement itself and one to the report. Both of these will require motions, and both of these changes are to reflect what we discussed in committee that wasn't completely accurately reflected in both the report and the draft IGA. So, Mayor, if I may, I'd start with one of those motions.
Okay, so why don't you explain the first change you want to make, and then at the completion of your explanation, we'll call for a motion to amend.
Okay. So, we had quite a bit of discussion at the committee level about what would be the next steps if the environmental testing identifies contamination. It was addressed in the first draft that we saw, and as the committee worked through it, what we saw initially, we did not think was the best course. So we discussed the change that we wanted to see, and what we decided would make the most sense. Well, I'll say what let me back up. So we decided that the most appropriate way to move forward would be to have, if contamination was found, have the purchase price reflect the new appraised value based on the market. Whatever the market says the value would be, with the contamination is what we should pay for that price, or pay for that parcel. I'm going to suggest the language change, and I think that will also help to clear this up.
Okay.
Okay?
You want to identify the bullet point?
Sure. So I'm going to, the motion to amend would be to take out the 3rd bullet point from the bottom in the report that was posted originally on board docs, to delete the clause that says, again, it's the 3rd bullet from the bottom of the list, and it starts with if any environmental contamination is found.
Mm-hmm.
So we would strike and delete that entire bullet and replace it with the language that I know Clerk Spencer has a copy. I believe everyone has a copy at their seat.
I have it. I think everyone.
Yes.
I think everyone does.
And the new language would read, as reflected in our discussion at committee, if any environmental contamination is found, the land will be reappraised to arrive at a revised, determined fair market value. And based on this, the city will decide to remediate the site as part of the project, or have the choice to avoid the agreement. Sorry. I was
Okay.
adding my editorial. It's not in there. So the language as
Okay,
written in the
so
copy.
I got it. Motion to amend, which is, and I appreciate that revised wording was supplied to Chair before this. So a motion to amend this report by removing the 3rd to the last bullet point that starts, if any environmental contamination is found. Strike that entire bullet point as was listed on board docs, replace it with language that better reflects committee direction, which is, if any environmental contamination is found, the land will be reappraised to arrive at a revised, determined fair market value, and based on this, the city will decide to remediate the site as part of the project or void the agreement. Clear? So, that is the motion by Alderman Deuter. Do I have a second for that motion? Alderman Wagner. So this motion is to replace the bullet point to better reflect decision coming out of Public Works. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, I will ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll on the motion to amend that bullet point in the report.
Deuter.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy. Aye. Conquest.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays. Motion to amend is approved. Bullet point is replaced with the revised wording. Alderman Deuter, you mentioned that there is a second change you'd like to make, or an amendment, which is part of the draft IGA attached to this report.
Correct. And in this case, again, it's a change to reflect what we discussed in committee. It's also related to in the case that we find environmental contamination, and it is removing some of the original language that we, directed to be removed, and it was left in this agreement. So if I may make a motion to remove the last two sentences in section 9C, which is at the top half of page 8. The last two sentences of that section start with, as an alternative to the city's right to declare this agreement null and void. So it's the entire the last two sentences of that section.
Okay, so that's the motion. So and Clerk Spencer's being given a copy by City Manager Grabowski. So a motion to remove the last two sentences of paragraph 9C that starts on page 7 but ends on page 8, and the actual deletion will occur on page 8. Motion to remove the last two sentences, starting with, as an alternative to the city's right to declare this agreement null and void, and finishes with, this agreement shall be null and void. Motion by Alderman Deuter, second by Alderman Wagner. So this is for council clarification. This is just to reflect committee intent. This was an old part of the agreement that goes against what committee's recommending. So, any questions as it relates to this amendment? Alderman Levin.
Maybe I didn't understand the report when I look at this, and I want to ask a question. So, the change in intent is if there's an environmental issue found, and as it says in the report, the land is reappraised, and the first question is, who does the reappraisal?
If I may,
Yes.
the process goes back to the original process, so that we go back to the same three appraisers who worked on the original appraisal.
All right, and so let's say it's, I would guess lower because there's an environmental problem, but let's say it's substantially lower, and based on this, the city can either say, we'll remediate it, or we'll void it. So if we take this language out that's in the report, there's no opportunity to, am I missing something, or we don't go back to the park? I mean, if it's $500,000 to remediate, we either have to say, I'm not sure what the point is. It's reappraised at 500,000 less, and then the city has a choice that, okay, we either remediate it or we void the contract. Where's the option to say that we're taking out that would say the land is worth less and we'll pay less and then remediate it?
Alderman Deuter.
So we had some reasonably extensive conversation on this point. Originally, the draft IGA said if contamination was found, the city would have three options. The first is to just pay the full cost of the remediation. The second is to walk away from the project. And the third was to negotiate with the Park District. The consensus of the committee was that the negotiations with the Park District, when it came to these finer points, what we, I will speak for my own opinion, what we've gotten is more of a take it or leave it. And I think we were concerned that we would be in that position again, where we put ourselves in a position where we didn't want to walk away from the project. We're going to want to get this project done. And we thought the most appropriate way to get some compensation for a contaminated site would be if we built in an automatic reappraisal, which we assume would reflect a decrease in the market, in the value of the land. So that would be, that decrease would be something that we could use to pay for the remediation, and that would be better off than if we didn't have that built in automatically.
All right, so if I understand the process, if we, the purchase, the agreed appraisal is X, and it costs $500,000 you're not looking at what it costs to remediate it. So you're looking at it, you're saying, well, we're gonna reappraise it based on all of this new information. Let's just say it comes out $500,000 less. And so the next step is, does the Park District have to sell it to us for that price? Because I don't see that in the report, and maybe that's why I'm getting confused, because it says the land will be reappraised to arrive at a revised determined fair market value. And so let's say it's $500,000 or less, and based on this, the city will decide to remediate the site as part of the project or void the agreement. It doesn't say anything about.
You want me to jump in, or you want to answer? Well, I was part of this conversation, Alderman Levin, so let me just try to maybe clarify further. Basically, what it does, it allows the city, what we wanted to do is we wanted to, the discussion, and Alderman Deuter stated, and I'll repeat it, the hope from the committee was to write a document and write a contract that was not subject to additional negotiations, because those have been not very fruitful. So the hope is that, and this is just a catch, if there is any environmental issues, which, to the best of our knowledge, there won't be, or there isn't. But if there is, the appraised value is reassessed, the multiplier is reassessed, and then the council will have the option to move forward as is with this reassessed value, including purchase, because this is just about the reassessment. The purchase clause and everything else is still the same in the agreement. It's just resetting the base price.
But that's.
Yes.
But that's not what I see in the agreement, because if we're taking out unless I missed it, we're talking about the last two sentences of paragraph C, 9C, and doesn't D say, if we elect to proceed with it after discovering environmental contamination, we notified of our decision? I mean, I'm just not sure the contract says, I think I agree with the concept, which is there's an environmental problem, we reappraise, and that's the new purchase price. But I don't see that really either in the report or in the ordinance.
So,
Contract.
Alderman Deuter.
thank you, Mayor. There were a number of conversations that I had today with the city manager, and I believe he also spoke to the attorneys who put together the agreement. If you look on page 3 of the draft IGA, this talks about kind of how the purchase would take place and how the value is arrived at. Everywhere in this section, they added the concept of, and I think the first time it shows up is in small letter I. The bottom half of that paragraph, it talks about the 3 Yellow Book appraisal reports shall be used to determine the appraised fair market value of the West Stormwater Detention Site and/or the revised appraised fair market value pursuant to. So throughout this entire page, all the provisions that talk about setting the price talk about the original price or the revised price.
Point of order.
Yes.
I think the intent, and I think Alderman Levin's comments he just made now, he agrees with the intent of the report. I think instead of trying to go into the draft IGA and determine on what should and should not be written, if we can utilize the intent of the report to have the expert being the city attorney to reflect that intent with this being known going into the vote, I think that would be appropriate. The IGA is too long, too detailed, and one thing ties into another, I think, for us to try to make those modifications.
What's your point of order, Alderman Brand?
I just thought I said
Point of order is a Roberts Rule point, not a substantive point on the discussion. So I'm just trying, because I want to rule on the point of order, but I didn't hear one.
Well, point of order, I thought, could also be procedural, and procedural being that I think we should be voting on the intent of the report, knowing that it will be reflected in the draft IGA.
All right. I'll take that as a comment, but I'll go back to Alderman Deuter. So I'm officially, there's no ruling on point of order. Alderman Deuter, were you finished with your statement?
Yeah, just to clarify that I believe the point that Alderman Levin is raising is one that was raised earlier, and I was told the attorneys are confident that in fact this would be an automatic swap of the reappraised value would replace the original value.
Alderman Levin, you okay?
I think I'll say yes if the city attorney has reviewed it. I'm sorry, I didn't see this change until just now, but I don't think this report actually says what we're all saying, but if everyone understands the intent, which I've described, then and that's what's in the IG. I think that the answer to my question is at the bottom of page 7, and as Alderman Toludo has pointed out, where it talks about the revised determined fair market value. So if the intent happens,
Okay, I think we're clear on the intent, and I'm gonna go with committee and attorney saying that the intent is in there. We're still based on, this is still a motion to remove those two lines that Alderman Deuter identified and second by Alderman Wagner, which is the continuation of paragraph C from page 7 to page 8, the last two sentences being removed, so that we have a motion to amend removing those two sentences in the IGA. Any additional comments as it relates to removing those two sentences? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll on the motion to amend.
Deuter.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Toludo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin. Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays, motion to amend is approved. So we have had two motions to amend. The report now sits before council with those amendments. Additional comments? Alderman Levin.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but because I don't think this report says what we just voted on, I'd like to move to reconsider the report to add 2 words to it. The amend,
So an additional amendment. Motion to amend.
Motion to reconsider what we just amended so that I can add 2 additional words. Just to amend.
Do you have to reconsider? I don't think you have to reconsider. You can amend.
Just amend.
Just amend.
Just amend. I mean, you could. You're on the prevailing side, but I don't think it's necessary.
All right.
So, Alderman Levin, you're looking at the highlighted?
Yeah, I'm looking at the highlighted. I think in the 3rd sentence that begins with determine fair market value and
Hold on. The 3rd bullet point from the bottom, right?
Right.
All right, go ahead.
This middle sentence, so it would say, determine fair market value, and based on this, the city will decide to purchase the land and remediate the site. That's what I think is missing.
I think it adds further clarification. Do you see any issue?
No, I don't.
All right, assuming there's no issue from the committee on it, you want to go with that motion to amend, yes?
That's my motion.
Okay, so Alderman Levin has a further motion to amend the previously amended bullet point. I'm going to read what we amended it to, then I will read what the motion is. The current bullet point reads, if any environmental contamination is found, the land will be reappraised to arrive at a revised, determined fair market value, and based on this, the city will decide to remediate the site as part of the project or void the agreement. Alderman Levin has made a motion to amend for the last portion of that sentence to say, the city will decide to purchase the land and remediate the site as part of the project or void the agreement. Yes, Alderman Levin?
Yes.
Second on the amendment, on the motion to amend by Alderman Mulliner. Any comments as it relates to the further amendment? Alderman Deuter.
Just a question, and would we, the suggested language, you said, the city will decide to purchase the land. Do we need to say whether to purchase the land?
Well,
No, I think because we have or, I think we're fine. There's,
Just to the or, where's,
right, if you can follow, it says or void the agreement, so, not, I think it's okay as is.
got it.
All right? Answer your question?
yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments as it relates to this amendment? Alderman Deuter.
I will just have one other comment, and the reason these changes were being made tonight is really in the interest of moving this project forward. I think if we were not under, if this were not a priority to get this done as quickly as possible, these probably would have been changes that we would have directed staff or the attorneys to make the changes in the IGA, make the changes in the report, and bring them back to committee for review. We're really trying to move this along, so it's a little clunky. I'll ask for kind of some patience to move this along.
Okay. Any other comments as it relates to the motion to amend? Clerk Spencer, please call the roll.
Levin.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino. Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
Ely.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays. Third motion to amend is approved. We now have what I'll consider the final report and draft IGA before council. Any additional comments? Alderman Toledo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As one of the two aldermen that represent folks that will be assisted by this project, I wanted to say a couple words. I'm very pleased that this IGA is up in front of us tonight. It has been a long time, and very happy that we are at this stage now, moving it forward, hopefully tonight, to the next step in the process. I do want to make sure, though, that everyone in the public understands that this still does go back to the Park District. There may be some remaining negotiations before this is finalized, hopefully soon. I did want to thank everyone as part of that was involved in the process, to the state, Park District, city staff, the committee themselves, and also residents who come and voice their opinions and their concerns as it relates to this and many of the other projects. This proposed IGA gives flexibility to the Park District to replace the IDNR restricted space. It's going to be difficult, as we can expect, to potentially find that, and this, I think, is a fair way to give them some flexibility to find that replacement land. At the same time, it protects the city and the residents from what was originally, many months and years ago, potentially a blank check to replace the land. And so this does give some protection to residents and the city. Most importantly, it does put together and put forward a solid negotiated offer on the table to the Park District to consider to move this project forward. So thank you.
Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just had one question, I guess. I understand the kind of the overall thinking, but when I look about, when I hear about the 1 and 1.5 times multiplier, what's the basis for that? Is it square footage of land? What we talk about putting 100% of the purchase price into an escrow account, and then by some process taking some of that away as we acquire, and I guess we're all assuming it's going to be more than one parcel of land as thing goes on. So what's our basis for comparison to get up to the 1.5 times potentially? Is it square footage or what is it?
I'm not sure. Let me try, because this is discussed at the Communications Committee multiple times. The Alderman Deuter mentioned when Park District first approached us with this about doing a conversion, which is what this is, they said, we have no idea what the land will cost, so we're going to ask you to pay for it. And we said, well, I don't think we can pay for a blank check, so you have to figure it out. So they came up with their own multiplier of 1.5 times, and it's gonna be 1.5 times appraised value.
Okay.
It's not square footage or anything else, it's 1.5 time appraised value.
Very good.
That's the Park District's response to us saying, we can't agree to a blank check.
So basis is dollars.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Muller. Then I'll come to this side of the room.
This is a difficult one for me to support. I support this because I know that the residents in Pine Street and that area over there really need this. My concern comes back to dollars and cents. We're paying 1.5 times the appraised value of a piece of property, where if we could have sat down with the Park District, IDNR, and the city, I believe we could have come to an agreement where we wouldn't be spending whatever that dollar amount is. Let's say it's $1 million or $1.5 million, and we could be using that money for flood mitigation rather than purchasing additional land someplace that's already been purchased once. I have grave concerns about the Park District continuing to hang things over our heads and hold us hostage. This $1.5 million is potential money that could have been used for this flood mitigation project. It also could have been used to improve the soccer fields, even if they were smaller soccer fields for the little kids or whatever we would have done on that property. I'm going to support it because those neighbors significantly need the relief from the flooding, but I do not support the Park District playing dollars with, money games with the taxpayers' money, and that's what they're doing. And I just don't feel that this is appropriate. I think we've got a lot of money that we're spending for land that we should not be spending. I think we should have been able to come up with these agreements without doing that.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm going to follow up Alderman Muller by saying I feel the exact same way. We should have gotten there quicker, and we should have gotten there for less money. I don't know that there's an elected official on any elected board, park, school, or city that would look at a deal where an owner of a piece of land comes before it and says, I want you to pay me 1.5 times its appraised value, and have that elected official go, that's a good thing. Yet that's what one elected body is asking us to do. I'm also going to support it reluctantly. I do have a couple clarifying questions, though. I think I know the answers, but I'd like to ask clarifying questions. The Park District's basic reasoning or their rationale for having to charge for the land or for them to go acquire replacement land is the IDNR. So is it purely the IDNR restriction that the Park District held up as a reason to have to buy land?
Let me try to answer that since I'm a member of the Communications Committee and I was in the IDNR meeting. So your question is, their requirement for why we have to buy the land?
Why does replacement land have to be purchased at all?
Oh, okay. And I think Alderman Muller alluded to this. Originally, when we went to the Park District, we actually went to them and asked if we could share the land and not purchase the land. And we actually set up a meeting and met with the IDNR. And the IDNR said that they would consider allowing for dual use in this case, which would have been no additional dollars. Certainly, there would have been a cost of the flooding project itself, but no dollars for the land. But that option was rejected by the Park District. So we didn't continue that conversation with the IDNR because the Park District was unwilling to participate in that. So their offer instead is one that's a path that's already on the books with IDNR, which is called a conversion. And when you do a conversion, so if there's ever a need for IDNR land, let's just say a public need, in this case there is, you can take the conversion route, which means that that land actually has to be sold and removed from IDNR restriction. And the requirement of the second half of the conversion is that an equivalent piece of land or property be found somewhere else. So that's because the Park District is going down the conversion route, then they have to replace the land.
So I understand the conversion piece, but I guess I was driving at, collectively, we in the Park Board could have approached the IDNR and said, can we use that space now, which is passive green space now, can it be passive green space in the future, just with a hole in it to retain water temporarily? We could have, collectively, or the Park District could have requested that of the IDNR officially for an official yes or no, and you're saying that request never happened?
Right, the IDNR, in the meeting that we had, the IDNR said, yes, we will be willing to consider that, submit a proposal.
And the Park District was unwilling to submit that proposal?
That's correct.
Okay. So that's very problematic to me, and I think it's obvious as to why. My final point here is, and Alderman Mulliner touched on it, whatever dollars we have to spend to acquire that land, whatever the appraisals come in, whatever the multiplier is, that's dollars that come from someplace else. These were unbudgeted dollars. These are dollars that we don't just have sitting around. They have to come from someplace else, which means one of several things. It means we do less flood mitigation down the road. It means we cut back services somewhere else. It means we dip into the savings account, or we raise taxes. The money comes from somewhere, and it shouldn't have to. Now, with all that said, I'm disappointed that we're at this point. I understand why we're at this point. I will reluctantly support the report.
Okay, additional comments. Alderman Leader.
I did speak on this before, so I won't speak again, but I will simply say I agree with every word spoken by Alderman Mulliner, and I agree with every word spoken by Alderman Healy.
Okay, additional comments. Alderman Bram?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, because I think a few aldermen said we will be paying 1.5 times. I believe that's what I heard. I just want to clarify that it's up to 1.5 times the appraised value, and just so that's not misconstrued out in the public, it is up to. So depending on what the appraised value is, you know, it does, and the piece of property that is found by the Park District, it doesn't have to mean that it's, you know, 1.5 times. They're not going to, as an example, if the total cost was 1.2 million of the property, but 1.5 times the appraised value was 1.5, they're not pocketing 300 grand. So I just wanted to make sure that's a distinct clarification.
Alderman Dunn?
Question for the committee. I couldn't find in the lineage of documentation on how this project evolved. At some point, we went from 30 homes in the project down to 20, and I'm just wondering what occurred to remove 10 houses from this project. If
Any
anyone knows the answer to
clarification from what? Any clarification from the committee? Alderman Deuter.
You know, I am not sure the number of 30 that you're looking at. I just today was looking at our prioritization report, which came last April, and it talked, according to the table in that report, it indicates that the current number of homes that flooded in the Pine Street area during the heading of the table says current number of homes flooded during the 100-year flood events, and for Pine Street it says 20, and identifies that this project would help all 20 of those homes. So I can't speak to an earlier number and why it might have changed.
Okay. It's a follow-up to that. Looking back at the Burke report from 2012, this project, along with quite a few others, were outlined, and the Pine Street project, this was back in April of 2012, Pine Street project to help 30 homes for a 100-year flood to provide 17 acre-feet of storage was $2.5 million, and that would be about $85,000 a home. That was in the earlier version of the Burke report. And then, I think back in November of 2014, in the revised project priority list, we listed Pine Street, the Pine Street project target completion date 2015. for 30 homes at $3.3 million, and $113,000 a house. So right now, I think based on the latest project value, and correct me if I'm wrong, the cost comes in at $3.4 million for that, and that helps 20 homes. And rough order of recent appraisals or thoughts on the value of that land are in the $800,000 range, so 150% of that would be about $1.2 million. So given that the cost of that project and the acquisition of the land for 20 homes, we're up to $220,000, $230,000 a home. So that starts to get me uncomfortable. I think it's a lot. It's a lot per home. I think the city and the residents are continuing to get less and less out of this project. Initially, we had 17 acre-feet, now we had 14. Initially, we had a soccer field, now we have nothing. And initially, we had $85,000 a home, and now we have $220,000 a home. And I think the residents in the city are getting less and less as we tried to partner with the Park District on this and come to a win-win situation. But the costs continue to elevate on the project. So at this point, I am not supporting this IGA. I think it's gotten to the point where it's the costs have gotten to a point where they're fairly high, and I think at a point where we need to seriously reconsider this. I know originally it was high on the priority list because it was a low dollar per house, but given that we have to purchase this land, given that the project has escalated in cost, I don't know that it falls as high on the priority list. So I have concerns about it, so at this point, I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. I wanted to thank you for your recap of the IDNR process, and I guess I had one question. It was interesting to hear the story about the two options. You could either cooperate and use the land for nothing, or you can convert it. Did the IDNR require a conversion rate of 1.5 times?
No, the IDNR doesn't set the rate of conversion. They just set parameters, so equal value, size, et cetera.
Okay, so that was obviously a request by the current landowner for that. I agree with Alderman Levin and Alderman Healy's comments. I will support it, but rather reluctantly.
Okay. Additional comments? Alderman Bram.
Yeah, I just want to speak to, and I'm not 100% sure Alderman Dunn's comments. You know, I don't know about the price per home and how it's changed over time, but you yourself, Alderman Dunn, made mention, your comments made mention of, you know, it was 17 acre feet and now it's 13, 14 acre feet. So I think as we continue to walk down that path and we understand what the project is going to be, that's where some of these parameters and the cost per home has changed. You know, as we all know, the project started one way and we are where we are today. I see the goal line in sight. I want to get to the goal line. Do I agree with Alderman Dunn's comments of the cost per household? Yeah, I think it's a lot of money. But I also think that it's the responsibility of the city of Elmhurst to make sure we get something done to keep stormwater in the right-of-way of, you know, as many homes, if not all homes, within the city of Elmhurst. And this seems to be the quickest. I don't know about dollars and cents anymore, but it definitely seems to be the quickest path to get there, so I'm in support of it.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to I want to make sure the council and more importantly the public is aware about comments made about, well, we may not pay up to 1.5 times. And that's true. That's an accurate statement. The agreement says up to, may not be 1.5. But I'd also like to make sure we all remember that this is a 3 acre piece of land next to railroad tracks, and I mean directly next to railroad tracks, in a flood-prone area. So if anybody thinks we can find three acres in Elmhurst for less than 1.5 times that piece of property, I mean, that's optimistic, and certainly I hope, but I'm not optimistic. Personally, I'm not. 3 acres directly next to railroad tracks in a flood-prone area, that's what we're acquiring.
Any additional comments? Okay, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to call the vote on the report with all approved amendments. Clerk Spencer.
Deuter.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
No.
Graham.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Onquist.
Aye.
13 ayes, 1 nays.
13 ayes, 1 nay. Agenda item 7.1, committee report is approved. On to reports and recommendations. 8.1, Mayor Morley, that's me. Couple of things on the list. As a follow-up to what we just finished discussing, we are heading into spring season, and that means that a lot of the floodwater mitigation we have been working on, a lot of the floodwater mitigation projects are going to be started around town, and I just want to list a couple of those, but also remind residents that they can go to elmhurststormwaterplan.org. You can go directly there, or you can go to a link off the front page of our city website, and you can get all these details there about all the projects. But I wanted folks to be aware of all of the projects that will be started, and most of them completed in 2016. We've got the Walnut Myrtle Evergreen project, which is the tree streets and a giant pipe over to the quarry. That is well on its way if you drive over there. Well, actually, I wouldn't recommend it. You can't get through. We've got the Webster Detention Basin, which is all but completed. We just need to do some landscaping when the weather clears up. We've got York Commons, which is the west lobe of York Commons. We do have a signed agreement with the Park District. Both parties have signed. We are in engineering review. I believe that Park District has reviewed what we'll call our 65% plan. So we're going to final drawings, and we'll be going out to final bid in a couple of weeks. The Madison School project, that is the detention and soccer field behind Madison School. That IGA has also been signed off on. We'll have a resident meeting coming up in about 2 weeks. We've got up at the Cloverleaf of York and I-290, I'll call it the Northwest Cloverleaf, which is right across from where the old Holiday Inn used to be. That is going out for final bid and final drawings in the next 2 weeks. The Harrison Detention Project, that's at the south end, kind of in the Yorkfield neighborhood. We're having a resident meeting in about 2 weeks. We've got, and then those are the ones that we have agreements on, whether it's with parks, schools, Illinois highways, whatever. All of those are projects that are in process or will start in 2016, and for the most part be active within 2016. The 2 remaining sites that I remain optimistic on for moving forward in 2016 is the Bryan Gravel Lot. There's a project, if you've been paying attention, at the southwest corner of Bryan Junior High, or Bryan Middle School, that would store 23 acre-feet. We are working on that. Hopefully a draft IGA will be going before Public Works Committee at their next meeting for review, discussion, ultimately to send it over to the school district to get that completed. And then we just finished our conversation with Golden Meadows. Next steps on Golden Meadows is we take that IGA, the draft of that IGA that's been approved by council, and we send that over to Park District. Don't know if they will accept everything that's in there. That IGA reflects a lot of conversation that has been had between representatives of both the Park District and City of Elmhurst. A lot of that at the Communications Committee, which brings me to my next point, which is the Stormwater Communications Committee. The next meeting is this Thursday in these chambers. That's the 24th at 7 o'clock, and we hope to have more information both from Parks and Schools on that. Parks relating to Golden Meadows. A couple of the representatives were in the audience tonight. They have a meeting on Wednesday, so we'll see if we get any information out of them. The remaining 3 projects from the parks have been rejected and are off the table, that being Crestview, Wild Meadows Trace, and East End. Those have been removed by the Park District for consideration. And then the school district, we hope to be talking about the Brian Gravel lot. The last thing I'll say is I want to congratulate the Elmhurst Public Library. They held their 100th year anniversary breakfast last Sunday. Had an opportunity to go. Linda Wheaton and Mary Beth and the whole crew over there, they cooked everybody breakfast and showcased the entire library, but also highlighted the brand new second floor. And if you haven't had a chance to go over there, I suggest that you do. That's my report. You had a question or comment, Mr. Alderman Healy?
A couple questions, Mayor. Couple additional stormwater projects that you didn't touch on. We've acquired some homes over the last several months.
Yes.
Can you, I mean, if you're prepared to, and I'm sorry to catch you kind of cold here, but can you kind of talk about where we're at in that process, when the homes will come down, when the holes will be dug? And then secondarily, I know we are continuing to engage with the county for some other areas that we don't have mitigation projects for, namely Swain, Villette, Swain area. Can either you or city staff, either at this meeting or perhaps the next meeting, give an update on where we're at in the county in those discussions?
Okay, so regarding the individual properties that we've purchased, we purchased 4 homes in a row on Geneva, and we purchased 3 homes in a row on Washington. I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Grabowski to give us a status on those.
Thank you. As far as Geneva goes, all the homes have been demolished, and 2 have been demolished, 2 are waiting demolition, excuse me. And we have been using DuPage Habitat for Humanity to come in and take materials out of those homes, really deconstruct the homes so that they can resell those for projects and to help that cause. So they've been coming out to the homes on Geneva to do that. Director Killian has been coordinating that, so we'll get those other 2 homes down reasonably soon, and the engineering design has started. As far as Washington homes go, we are coordinating the demolition of those, but we've not started engineering on that until we have all of those in possession, and I think there's one that we haven't closed on yet, so we will start engineering on that very soon.
Alderman Healy?
Thank you for the update. Would we expect or hope that at those 2 sites on Washington and Geneva that detention projects might be started and possibly completed in 2016, or realistically, are we looking, starting 2016, completion 2017?
I would think that construction would start in 2016. I don't know that we would complete in 2016.
Okay.
And we'll get back to you on the county information at a later time. Okay? That completes my report. City Manager Grabowski.
One item, thank you, and that's that we announced an open house on April 12th for the draft North York Corridor Streetscape Plan. Information can be found on the website. That'll be Tuesday, April 12th, 7 p.m. here in City Council chambers. And again, that's for the draft North York Corridor Streetscape Plan.
Okay, any other reports or recommendations from the council? Alderman Bram.
Yeah, I just want to touch on a comment that was made by one of the residents tonight about the Edison Garage, the change order for the metal. There was discussion on the point that the resident brought up about those dollars. The resident, I believe, made commentary of we should go after our project manager. But between the 2 different companies that did the work, the metal work for the garage, There is discussion on following up with the other company to recoup some, if not all, of those dollars.
Okay, any other reports? Any other business? Alderman Toledo.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I just wanted to say thank you to Public Affairs and Safety and city staff involved in evaluating the parking and the traffic control elements around the old hospital campus. Particularly the stop sign at Avon and Schiller was the bane of all Fourth Ward residents who lived east of Avon anytime they were coming into town. So I'm very glad, and I know all of those residents will be glad to see that stop sign going down. Even though there is one going in, that will increase safety, and I think that's a good thing too. So thank you.
Okay, any other business? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman Honquist, second by Alderman Mulliner. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.